Welcome back to the Gridiron Waiver Wire Report. Looking forward to week 3 and, well, if you, like us, had a week 2 that was somewhat ravaged by injuries, where it was probably easier to find players who made it through the week healthy than they did injured. It's going to be a stacked waiver wire report this week. There's some players we've had to leave off. We'll talk about that maybe a little bit as well. Delighted to say alongside myself, Gavin. Pete Rogers from Fake Teams is with us as well. Pete, did you have a successful week 2 overall?
No. it was a rough week too. So I am here to spread my fantasy know-how that let me down in week 2 to you so that you can be let down in week 3.
You didn't have all of those Aaron Jones. I faced Aaron Jones in 3 different leagues this week. So I am smarting this morning. In a big, big way. Let's start off with then Joshua Kelly of the Los Angeles Chargers, a Chargers team who, well, with Justin Herbert under center, looked good this week, and Joshua Kelly was a big part of that.
Yeah, this backfield seems to be able to sustain 2 running backs with fantasy value. We saw it last year with Melvin Gordon and Austin Eckler. Obviously, Austin Eckler is still there. And Joshua Kelly came in, 23 carries, 64 yards. He also saw 2 catches for 49 yards. He is someone he saw, I think it was like 50 or 52% of the snaps in LA, regardless of if it's Herbert or Tyrod Taylor moving forward. I think this backfield can support both these running backs. So if you don't have anything in them, go get Joshua Kelly. He's certainly a viable flex play from here on out, I think.
Now, number 4 on our list for the waiver wire report this week is someone who, if you picked him up at the right point on the waiver wire last year, was an absolute late season hero for you because of the injuries they had in Atlanta. They're healthy now there, so it's pretty surprising that Russell Gage has stepped up and still proving to be fantasy worthy.
I mean, if the Falcons just decide that they're going to throw the ball 60 times every game, then they can support 3 fantasy premier wide receivers. Obviously, you're not going to be able to get any of Julio Jones or Calvin Ridley at this point, but Russell Gage being out there, he's seen at least 9 targets in the first 2 games. This week, he saw 9 targets for 6 catches, 46 yards, and a touchdown. Like, I want a part of this offense, just given how much they're throwing the ball and how many points they're putting on the board and how much letting down the team in general is doing. But I apologize, Falcons fans, for that. But Russell Gage is definitely someone who I want to get onto my roster and be able to have a part of this offense that could be one of the best offenses in the league. It's certainly looking like that.
Dan Quinn being the ultimate choking head coach will not affect your fantasy. And in fact, if anything, as we all know, sometimes with wide receivers, it helps quite a lot. A guy who actually we talked about at one point last night about being number 1 on the list for this week until we realized that he plays on a just dreadful football team is Giants running back Dion Lewis.
Yeah, unfortunately, Saquon Barkley seems to be out for the year with a torn ACL, which is just terrible news for him and the Giants and fantasy managers everywhere. So in steps Dion Lewis. Right off the bat, I will say, if you can get a starting running back in the NFL on your fantasy team off waivers, you should do it. That being said, Dion Lewis carried the ball 10 times for 20 yards. He got a touchdown and had 2 catches on 2 targets for 26 yards. This Giants line did not do that great protecting Saquon Barkley or opening holes for him in the first 2 weeks, or week 1 and when Saquon was healthy in week 2. Dion Lewis is a much smaller back and obviously not the back that Saquon Barkley is. So I'm still a little worried about what exactly Dion Lewis will be able to produce with the Giants situation. That being said, especially in there bringing in Devonta Freeman for a possible workout. So Dion Lewis might not even have that gig locked down. But like I said, starting running back in the NFL, if you can get that off waivers, you should do it and worry about consequences later.
There's a bit of a tease of who our number 1 could end up being as well this week. But before we get there, second on the list, a guy who I've got a little bit of value in already from a couple of leagues where I picked him up late because I've loved him in the past. And with the injuries to the Titans team, Corey Davis is looking like a guy who could really produce.
Yeah, people forget Corey Davis is a very good wide receiver. He was a top 10 draft pick. And yes, it took him a while to develop, but we're starting to finally see that come to fruition here. He had a huge week 1, and his week 2, a lot of people were expecting probably similar numbers with A.J. Brown out. He was outshined by Adam Humphries, who had 5 catches for 48 yards and a touchdown. But Davis still managed to put up a solid fantasy performance. He got 3 of his 5 targets, 36 yards, and a touchdown. With A.J. Brown dealing with some sort of injury, it seems like, and just Corey Davis finally seeming to click with Ryan Tannehill and in this Titans offense, he's certainly worth rostering. And this is probably the last chance you're going to be able to get him onto your fantasy team, just given his percent rostered. So if you are looking for a wide receiver help, Corey Davis I am confident in him now to be able to sustainably give you fantasy value for the rest of the year.
Now, what you have to remember about when you're playing fantasy is that sometimes going 0-2 to start the season isn't the end of the world. I have won seasons from going 0-2, 0-3 before because it's meant I've been able to get the best waiver wire pickups in the first few weeks, and I've been the squad that's ended up developing and looking better down the stretch. So with that in mind, and with the fact that we're talking about injuries this week, there were no team harder hit this week than my beloved San Francisco 49ers.
Rough!
Yeah, really rough week for them. But one guy who did come through and shine, got his first touchdown in, 3 years at this point, and with the injuries they've got elsewhere, looks like he might be the feature guy, is Jerick McKinnon.
Yeah, so Raheem Mostert was the starting running back, and that was clear. That was something we were going into this year kind of worried about in the fantasy community was, are we going to see Raheem Mostert really have that gig locked down, or is it going to be a committee again? He had that gig locked down, but now he's injured. It looks like a sprained MCL that will probably keep him out a couple weeks. Tevin Coleman came in and did get the lion's share of work. He carried the ball 14 times for 12 yards with 2 catches for 28, but he also left the game banged up. So I haven't seen an update on what Tevin Coleman's status is, but all this to say, this opens for Jerick McKinnon to now get a huge workload moving forward. He's carried the ball 3 times for 77 yards and a touchdown. He's a boom or bust player so far, but with more opportunity, we're going to get more of that boom. And I trust Kyle Shanahan to be able to scheme Jerick McKinnon to get a lot of production for you, especially, like you said, this is a team that has no wide receivers, lost their starting tight end. Their number 1 quarterback is also injured. So I think this is going to be something where Jerick McKinnon could step into a role where he is the offense for maybe a better part of like 2 weeks. And if I can get that onto my roster, 100%, that's who I'm going for this week.
And here's a teaser for you for this weekend. You've got Nick Mullins starting at quarterback, who I don't care what some 49ers fans seem to think. Watch how Garoppolo played in the first half yesterday. There's a big drop-off in the quality of quarterback. And they're playing a Giants defense who aren't very good. So even if you pick up McKinnon this week and he wins you this week's fantasy game, you're up to 1-2 and you're on a roll. That's where you want to be.
Ready to go.
You just, as the players say, every week you're 0-0 and you just want to go 1-0 week in, week out. Brilliant stuff. Pete, wonderful. Where can people check out more of your work?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Pete M. Rogers, and also check it out. I drop top 10 waiver wire ads for the week on faketeams.com, so you can go check that out there.
So check out Fake Teams. Make sure to check out The Gridiron Show as well with Kaylin Kaler, Simon Clancy and Matt Sherry alongside myself. Plus, every week we'll be joined by Ravens Super Bowl winning head coach Brian Billick to break down the coaching decisions from around the league. That comes out on a Wednesday morning. And let us know how you got on in your fantasy this week and any waiver wire pickups maybe that we missed that you think are going to be absolute gold going forwards. This has been The Gridiron Waiver Wire Report.